Our channel here. This is going to be a test and review video of this particular unit. This is a old Gallagher MPE2. It's a 1986 model, I believe, because this board says 1991 on it, but I think this has been replaced because the board over here says February of 86. So they only made this unit for about 5 years back in from about 85 to 89, 84 to 89, somewhere in that range. They had an MPE, an older version of it that was around prior to that one. So they probably had a 15-year run of this kind of generation of unit, of this style, of this model, of the MPE, the MPE2. But very old school, very reliable. So what we did, we fixed the board up on this one. It's had a capacitor replaced in it at some point in time. They do wear out as they get a little age on them. But we repaired the board, and that was it. And it's working fine again. Not to do nothing else to it. Oh, I did replace the connector on a wire. But what I want to do is I want to do a load test on this, and we'll see what under different loads what kind of volts this thing puts out, and what kind of joules, output joules this has. MPE2, people say, oh, 2 joule. Well, I think that's a second version unit. The first one was called MPE, and it was a big oblong rectangular box. Looked a lot different on the inside of different components. Yeah, I think that's same main board, main module in there, but I think minus the light bulbs. But it had a different transformer, different capacitor, different output board, and everything else was different. Well, let's hook this unit up. Let's turn this thing on. We're going to do a no-load open circuit voltage reading on it, which the stamp on the inside said 4.8 volts no load. And I did a repair video on this one. If you haven't seen that one, there'll be a link down below you can click on and watch. It's about a 25-minute video of us going through this and fixing everything on it and getting it going again. But these were probably the lowest voltage units that Gallagher would produce. They were right around 5,000 volts max, what they put out of them. But they were very reliable. For what they're designed to do, they do a really good job. So let's go ahead and plug this unit into the wall. Alright, we're going to go across the terminals here at the bottom. And we're reading 5.2, 5.1 kV. Has no load under no stress at all, just what the thing maxes out at. I'm going to turn it off real quick. I'm going to take these knobs loose a little bit. I'm going to put the test leads of the meter here down inside them and use the knobs, tighten the knobs down to help hold the wires, hold the leads where I want them to be. 5.1 kV. Now let's switch it over to a 500 ohm load. 500 ohm load drops down from 5 down to 3.5, so lost 1500 volts. We're at a 0.75 output joule. Let's put it down to 200 ohm. We went from 0.75 down to 0.5, so 500 and 200 ohms, there's a happy medium in there somewhere. So 200 ohms drives it down below even what 500 ohm load did. But I mean, the volts would have fallen, of course, but the joules fell as well. So that means that somewhere, I guess people call it saturation. It's going past its peak output joules. So 0.75 was the highest that we saw. But we went to 200 ohm load, and 0.75, we thought if it was still able to handle that, it would have went up maybe close to 1 joule, but it was 200, still 200. So if we had like a 300 or 400 ohm load, somewhere in the middle there, that probably would have been a little bit less stress in the unit, and maybe would have kind of like 0.9, joules, but on 500 ohm load, we're at 0.7 joules. So it's probably be between 0.7 and 0.9 output. So less, I say, a joule at most. So it probably is right around like 1.5, 2 joules stored. So stored joules and output joules are two different ratings. Stored joules is the energy stored up at the capacitor, what it is. But by the time it discharges, it goes through the rest of the board and into the transformer. There's always loss between stored joules and output. Just like horsepower in a tractor, there's engine horsepower and PTO horsepower. There's always loss because it could be a 100 horsepower engine on a tractor. You could have, 65 to 75 horsepower at the PTO, because there's the transmission and differential and drive shaft, all those things that you have lost between every one of those devices there, or components there. So the same thing with these units. You get the stored joules is always a little higher than the output, but this is actually lower than I thought it was going to be. I thought it might have been a joule or more, but I didn't know what the stored was on it exactly. But there you go, good little tidbit of information, I guess. Let's try one more test here. Didn't change at all. Let's go to no load. And we'll see like what it's like how often it's pulsing and stuff. So we're pulsing every 1.1 second. That's what this is. 1.1 seconds, how often it's pulsing. And the shock itself, when it's on the line, is on for 0.15 of a second. So it's 150 milliseconds. So 0.15 of a second is how often it's actually shocking, or the shock itself on the fence, how long it's on the fence for. But what's pulsing every 1.1 seconds, so a little bit longer than a second. So it's kind of some neat information. Well, that's it for this little video here. Thanks for watching. And there's some information right there. If you got a fence charger wants to take a look at, we have to take a look at it for you. And until next time, we'll see you guys later on.